Well, seeing all of this happen again leaves many black Americans and families and communities with many different emotions: anger, fear, confusion, to name a few.
How do we deal with all of it? What is the next step? Well, joining us now is psychologist and professor at Agnes Scott College in Decatur, Georgia, Dr. Maryam Jernigan. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Is there a name or a title for what the public goes through after seeing these jarring images on television over and over and over again, and so soon after the Ahmaud Arbery case, for example?
Absolutely. So in the field of, I would say, mental health and certainly psychology, we refer to this under the umbrella of racial trauma. And racial trauma is really a way for us to understand both the physical as well as the psychological effects of exposure to significant experiences of racism. What's unique about the videos, and so the emergence of social media, as well as individuals who are capturing incidents that we know have been long-standing in the Black community, unfortunately, is that it allows for increased exposure for more individuals to see and to witness what has occurred. So in the field of psychology, we also talk about vicarious trauma, which is when you witness the direct implications of trauma that someone else has experienced directly, as is the case when we're watching the George Floyd video. So racial trauma is a phenomenon that has been studied as well as documented for a very long time, particularly amongst psychologists of color who have really pushed the field to recognize and acknowledge the negative consequences of racism and discrimination.
Dr. Jernigan, people are obviously hurt, but what can they do? What about protesting, taking action in their local government? Do those type of things help, or is there something else you can recommend?
I think really approaching it from a wide range. So first and foremost for me is just recognizing that there's no one way to react or to respond. So the validation that was indicated in the clip prior to my coming on, so really recognizing and honoring the feelings that emerge. So the anger, the exhaustion that I hear folks talking about, that they're these cases continually be presented in the media and videos being released. But the first step is really to acknowledge what you are experiencing, that there's no one way to react. And then I think depending on the individual, that really determines what might be in your best interest in terms of how to deal with or to cope with what you're seeing. So for some individuals, for example, it may be beneficial to enter into discussion, so to talk with family and friends about what they've seen, what they're experiencing, what they're feeling. I always caution folks, though, that to be very intentional and to be deliberate about who you're engaging in conversation. So, for example, some folks are choosing to post on social media, just recognizing that that may open up a variety of opinions. And if you're feeling significantly impacted, that may not be the position you want to be in. But for some individuals, it's helpful to talk. For others, it may be helpful to journal. They may be more introspective and they may want to go inward. Other individuals engage in, sort of poetry or actually do try to find a way to release what it is that they're feeling. And I think in those instances, that's where we see, again, that need to act. And that can come in the form of protest. That can come in the form of an individual that may want to write a piece or a blog. That may come, in the form of an individual that wants to hold a community event. So there's a variety of ways, I think, to deal with it. What's most important for me is that people acknowledge what they're feeling and that they find a mechanism to be able to navigate and to cope with the emotions. Because racial trauma is not just a mental thing. So it's not something that we think about. It's something that we experience in our bodies. So if we think about the physical effects of racism, which we know and are well documented as well, also things like moving your body, really counteracting some of the negative implications of what we're feeling. So think about calming yourself, whether that's meditation or doing yoga, for example, to counteract some of the more significant emotions that we may be feeling.
And in our final seconds, Doctor, let me ask you that with this happening during the COVID-19 pandemic, we're still in the first wave. Many medical experts will say we don't have church. And in the Black community, that is a place where we go for comfort and we go for fellowship and all those things. Does that make this a more difficult process for our community?
I think it makes it certainly potentially more challenging, but I would encourage folks to be intentional and deliberate and to create the spaces. So for religious and spiritual communities, for example, just bringing awareness to the fact that this is something that individuals are experiencing on top of the collective trauma of COVID-19, which really creates an additional kind of traumatic experience. I would encourage those folks who are in positions of leadership, so whether they're community-based organizations, religious or spiritual communities, to open up space, whether that's virtual space, for example, to allow folks to be able to process and to talk about, and maybe to have experts on a panel to provide some additional tips and recommendations. So although there are challenges there, I think if we're proactive, if we recognize and we're strategic, that will likely address some of the issues. But obviously, for folks, it is better to be in a collective. For some individuals, it's better to be in a collective space and they enjoy that community. I think it's a matter of us recognizing that we still need that community. We just need like during the pandemic.
Dr. Maryam Jernigan at Agnes Scott College, thank you so much for joining us once again, and we'll speak to you again soon, I'm sure.
My pleasure.